Early tanks were supposed to end the war. They were meant to smash trenches, break stalemates, and restore movement to a battlefield frozen in mud and blood. Instead, many of them broke down before reaching the enemy, got stuck in craters, overheated, or became slow-moving targets. So the question isn't just why tanks struggled, it's why the weapon that would one day dominate warfare failed so badly at first. When tanks appeared on the battlefield in World War I, they looked unstoppable. Massive steel machines rolling forward under machine gun fire felt like something the enemy simply wouldn't be able to counter. But what soldiers quickly discovered was that early tanks were not symbols of technological mastery. They were experiments rushed into combat under desperate conditions. The first problem was simple: early tanks were unreliable. These machines were built at the absolute edge of what early 20th century engineering could handle. Engines overheated constantly. Transmissions failed. Tracks snapped or slipped off. Some tanks broke down before even reaching the front line. Others made it only a few hundred meters before grinding to a halt. A tank that couldn't move wasn't a breakthrough, it was a steel coffin. Even when they did move, early tanks were painfully slow. Many could barely outrun a walking soldier. This made them easy targets for artillery once the initial shock wore off. And that shock didn't last long. The first time tanks appeared, they caused panic. The second time, the enemy started adapting. Artillery crews learned to fire directly at tanks. Infantry were trained to attack them at close range. What had once seemed invincible quickly became vulnerable. Another major issue was the terrain itself. World War I battlefields were not open plains. They were devastated landscapes filled with mud, shell craters, collapsed trenches, barbed wire, and debris. Tanks were supposed to cross this terrain, but in reality, it often defeated them. Heavy tanks sank into mud. Craters swallowed them whole. Trenches collapsed beneath their weight. Instead of breaking the stalemate, many tanks became stuck directly in front of enemy lines. Then there was visibility, or the lack of it. Tank crews were almost blind inside their vehicles. Narrow viewing slits offered only fragments of the battlefield. Commanders had little idea where friendly units were, where the enemy was concentrated, or what obstacles lay ahead. Communication was nearly non-existent. Radios were rare or unreliable, so tanks couldn't coordinate with infantry or artillery. Once a tank advanced, it often did so alone, cut off from support and information. The human cost inside the tank was brutal. Conditions were horrific. Engines filled the interior with heat and toxic fumes. Crews suffered from exhaustion, burns, carbon monoxide poisoning, and deafening noise. Shell impacts shook the entire vehicle, spraying metal fragments inside. Even when a tank wasn't destroyed, the men inside were pushed to physical and psychological limits few could endure for long. Doctrine was another major failure. Early tanks were often used incorrectly. Commanders didn't yet understand how to integrate armor with infantry, artillery, and aircraft. Tanks were sometimes sent forward in small numbers, spread too thin to achieve a breakthrough. Other times they were expected to perform impossible tasks, crossing miles of enemy territory without support. The idea of combined arms warfare, where tanks worked as part of a coordinated system, simply hadn't been developed yet. Production limitations also held tanks back. They were expensive, slow to build, and mechanically complex. There were never enough tanks available to sustain large-scale operations. Even when breakthroughs occurred, there weren't enough vehicles to exploit them. Momentum was lost, and the war slid back into stalemate. And yet, despite all of this, tanks did not disappear. Because even in their failure, they showed potential. When a tank did reach enemy lines, it could suppress machine guns, cross wire, and protect infantry in ways nothing else could. Every breakdown, every loss, every failed assault became a lesson. Engineers improved engines. Designers refined tracks and armor. Commanders began to understand how tanks should be used, not alone, but as part of a system. By the end of World War I, tanks had not won the war, but they had changed it forever. The failures of early tanks weren't proof that the idea was wrong. They were proof that warfare had entered a new era faster than technology, doctrine, and leadership could keep up. The tank didn't fail because it was useless. It failed because it was too new, introduced into a war that wasn't ready to use it properly. And the lessons learned in those muddy fields would shape how wars were fought for the next century. In the next video, we'll look at how those lessons were applied, how tank design evolved, how tactics changed, and how armored warfare went from barely working to dominating the battlefield. If you enjoyed this video and want to see how warfare transformed even further, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with the channel. This is Total War Epilogue, where we explore the moments when war changed forever.